from the crypt.
Here is a very happy Halloween from me and Horror on the Rocks to all you boys and ghouls. Tonight's episode features a man waking up from a coma. His wife changes out of her black clothes and irritated remarks, "I really cannot depend on you in anything."
At midnight in the month of June, I stand beneath the mystic moon. An opiate vapor, dewy and dim, exhales from out her golden rim, and softly dripping, drop by drop, upon the quiet mountain top, steals drowsily and musically into the universal valley. The rosemary nods upon the grave, the lily lolls upon the wave, wrapping the frog about its breast. The ruin moulders into rest, looking like lathe, see the lake, a conscious slumber seems to take, and would not for the world awake. All beauty sleeps, and lo, where lies Irene with her destinies. Oh, lady bright, can it be right? The window open to the night, the wanton airs from the tree trop laughingly through the lattice drop. The bodiless airs a wizard rout, flit through my chamber in and out, and wave the curtain canopies so fitfully, so fearfully, above the closed and fringed lid. Nay, which they slumbering soul lies hid, that o'er the floor and down the wall, like ghosts the shadows rise and fall. O lady dear, hast thou no fear? Why and what art thou dreaming here? Sure thou art come o' far off seas, a wonder to the garden trees. Strange is thy parlor, strange thy dress, strange above all thy length of tress, and this all solemn, silent test. A lady sleeps. Oh, may she sleep, which is enduring, so be deep. Heaven have her in its sacred keep, the chamber changing for one more holy, this bed for one more melancholy. I pray to God that she may lie forever with unopened eye, while the pale-sheeted ghosts go by. My love, she sleeps. Oh, may her sleep, and it is lasting, so be deep. Soft may the worms about her creep, far from the forest dim and old. For her may some tall vault unfold, some vault that oft hath flung it black, and winged panels fluttering back, triumphant o'er the crested palls of her grand family funerals. Some sepulchre remote alone, against whose portals she hath thrown in childhood many an idle stone. Some tomb from out whose sounding door she ne'er shall force an echo more. Thrilling to think, poor child of sin, it was the dead who groaned within. I apologize ahead of time. I am sorry. I am so sorry, listener. I've been urged to open up, to share my experience, as I have no conscious connections left in the waking world. I know at this point that I'm just a no-face person, but I need to share this with someone. Anyone. Besides the hospice worker that comes to my house, my only other companion lies unconscious in the living room. And he means everything to me. If he passes, I am not sure what will happen to me. There's no way for me to ready myself for such a loss. And I feel so alone. His body speaks to me in the hush and huff of his breathing machines. An occasional mechanical signal breaks the silence. And we only have each other now. And I am thankful that I can still slip my hands in his, rest my head against his chest, and listen to the heart thumping. I'm still here. I'm still here. Here's my story. Please take some time out of your day to listen to it, to absorb it into you. I need a hug right now. I need so many things. It wasn't always like this. Before Brant came into my life, conscious and normal, mind you, I was surrounded by general loneliness. At first, I considered myself as an outcast, like a magnet that repelled most people. It was an easy thing to do. My mother believed in geographical cures for her emotional ailments, and having the constant stigma as the new kid made it hard for me to form strong friendships. But the more that we moved, I realized that I was more like a domino architect. Instead of repelling potential friends, I had the misfortune of setting events to push everyone away from me. They'd all fallen away by the time that I met Brent. My father was my first casualty. I couldn't help it. Born a daddy's girl. One of the rare times that my mother sat up to talk with me. She told me how smitten he was with my newborn dark curls, the laughter in my eyes as I gurgled and reached for him. Fatherhood was a mantle that he proudly wore. And before me, he practiced law with my mother at a small and successful firm in the city. Always the more competitive one, the career-driven one, and it was a surprise to my mother and the firm when he put it all on hold to raise me. And so my mother worked, and my father put his career on hold after I came into the world. And for my first few years, we had an idyllic family. Mother would work long into the night, and father would look after me and lead me into childhood. He tucked Polaroids of me into mother's lunches, and she had clusters of them all over her office. Our two smiling faces. He'd homeschooled me through elementary school, taking me on road trips across the country, showing me history, teaching me geometry through pool, astronomy through a lens, geology digging through the mud. We'd adventured. He was my whole world and my closest friend. And when father got sick, my mother took it hard. And to his credit, he hid it from her for a couple of years. Maybe himself too. Sickness sneaks up on you like that sometimes. You feel more tired than usual than weaker. And we can easily attribute it to getting older, to the albatrosses that hang around our necks. Being a parent is hard. So he put me first, always. I guess until the end. Then he passed away and it was just the two of us. And the Polaroid. Mother had given me the stacks and stacks of photographs from her office. She kept a picture of the two of them in a small frame on her desk from when they first started dating. They'd gone to the photo booth on their second or third date, and he kissed her in the last photograph. A thin little frame protected their unlined faces, smiling and carefree. Those moments lost too long ago. And as a child, I knew Mother wasn't handling her loss well. Instead of taking a step back from trying to make partner at the law firm, she worked even harder and was rarely home. And in her place, she provided me with an endless swarm of nannies. And as my mother would do, she made sure her little girl was well provided for. I had a few memorable ones that had stayed. Gerda, with her shock of red hair and her ability to always have hot honeyed rolls for breakfast. Sonia and her perfect eyebrows and patient hands teaching me to crochet. Maddie and her little girl that played dolls with me endlessly. Some nannies stayed longer than others, but just as I connected with them, a new one would take her place. My nanny was a transient role and was filled until I was in high school. Mother moved us when a better opportunity for her arose, and it meant that I rarely had enough time to put down my roots or grow attachments in an area. I have pictures of all of them. Pictures and memories, and it still draws tears to my eyes to think of all of those goodbyes. My nannies did what they could for me, and I would grow up into a strong young woman. I felt like many of them tried to fulfill a little of that motherly role that I lacked. And to this day, I'm so grateful that I had so many women that I could look up to and grow with. And without them, I'm not sure that I'd be here today. I was in high school when my mother had deemed me too old for a nanny, and had given me the honor of autonomy. The bus route picked me up at home and dropped me off promptly at the same time every day. And once home, I knew how to prepare for dinner and would set up my routine of cleaning and doing homework. I'd spend a lot of my free time reading or crocheting and watching television. Characters created in print and screen staved off a bit of that longing for companionship. This is around the same time that my dreams started. When I started feeling lonely, feeling so isolated. You get this hunger for social interaction, kind of like the feeling of when you miss breakfast. It's there, drumming away from your eyes, and as long as you're focused and doing something, you won't never notice. Everyone dreams. Every night. We mostly don't remember our dreams, but for those of us that do, they can range from ridiculous to comforting or to even terrifying. And as a girl who lived mostly alone, I started looking forward to my dreams. Sometimes Father would be there and we'd do things like fly over the mountains in Colorado and the Red Oaks in Oregon as if the states were stitched side by side. We'd sit on presidential noses in Mount Rushmore, and sometimes I'd dream that while I was cleaning, that I'd find new and hidden rooms of my house, and that he lived there. The kitchen pantry would have a false panel, and I would be able to crush my body in such a way to find a new hallway that smelled like him. My bare feet could feel the dusty floorboards as I found his room and his study in our first house. I'd wake elated and ready to launch out of bed to tell Mother, only to find my cheeks wet to realize that I had been dreaming. There was no fake panel in the pantry. I checked at least a dozen times. Father was gone, and I was alone. Then I dream of my nannies, taking me home. Of Sonia and her crochet hook, weaving me a perfect blanket in blues, greens, and purples as we sipped hot chocolate by the fire with a record on. Gerda would take me in her arms and declare me her best friend. I never had one before. And we'd go over my rock collection, touching each one as I recounted its story. Maddie and the little girl would hold my hand and take me into the garden, and we'd make floral crowns with wildflowers and weeds. We'd throw stones in a still lake and stained our mouths with fresh blackberries to the baritone core of frogs. And every morning I'd wake up alone. I'd pack my lunch, brush my hair, donned my jumper, and took the bus to school. At first, the buzz of teens around me made me feel more alone. Forming friendships wasn't as easy as when I had dreamed. And I tried. I formed weak acquaintances that let me sit with them at lunch. As a good student, I'd never suffered to find a group to work with for projects, and I bore my meager athleticism well when I grouped with others like sorts at gym. Occasionally, I'd been invited to birthday parties. I'd eat cake, and I enjoy hanging out with other people my age, but I always felt like an outsider or an addition. I wasn't generally bullied, or picked on, mind you. But I wasn't liked enough to form ready friendships where I could just call someone up from a memorized phone number. Girls didn't either have room in their friend circles, or I didn't live any place long enough to find one. I could get people to talk to me, but I could never get them to listen to me, to make a connection. The friendships were one-sided, and I couldn't help but feel like a fisherman that rigorously got his bait stolen and went home with a sunburn and no supper. During summer months, we'd either move or I'd explore my neighborhood alone, and I kept looking forward to my dreams. And by the time 7th grade hit, I'd started having my favorite dreams, a recurring dream. I'd wake up in a swell of a hill. A sycamore tree bent over the surface of the smooth lake, and an older woman with short cropped hair just below her chin, smiling. "Welcome home, Brianna." In the dream, I'd run to her and hug her waist. Dreams had started before my growth spurt, and the woman was tall and warm. I'd felt safe and pressed my face into her apron. To have my little frame engulfed in her arms. She'd pet my head and say pretty things to me that I wished my mother would tell me. My face would contort and I'd hold back tears, and she would tell me that she was proud of me. She had a son that was a couple of years older than me, and we'd play. He had a treehouse, and we'd eat lunches, bring out card games, and decorate it with things that we found by the lake. A built-in shelf housed a squirrel skull that we found in the mud at the base of the tree. A limestone rock with 1,000,000 fossilized shells and a piece of green glass worn smooth by water and time. These two people in the dream would remember what I told them. And as the seasons changed in my life, theirs did too. In every way, it felt real. Except for the slight detail that, from their noses up, their faces were in shadow. In the dream, I didn't notice, but upon waking, it felt like those two people could be anyone. The boy had a small blunt chin, brown curls, and round cheeks. He was a little gangly, but I didn't mind. Even in my dreams, I awkwardly ran with the grace of a three-legged grasshopper. I also didn't know his name, or his mother's name. These were details that washed away upon waking. As my mother and I hopped from state to state, I stopped caring that she was rarely home when I was awake. I stopped caring that I didn't have friends that cared if I moved or would save me a seat at assemblies. I got to see my friends every night for 8 hours. And at the time, I didn't think that it was too abnormal to have recurring dreams nearly every night. My friendship with the boy, as he turned into a man, changed as I got older. And in a few years, we'd hold each other in the treehouse. I'd bury my face in his chest, and he'd rest his cheek on the top of my head. We were closer, and it was different. And I had felt differently for him, more for him, each time that I woke. His mother would give me a knowing look and laugh when I'd wake up there, and I'd blush and I'd find him. Friends didn't hold hands the way that we held hands as we looked over at the lake and listened for the wave after wave of crickets chirping and reflecting of thousands of fireflies blinking in and out like a far-off starlight. It wasn't until my senior year in high school that I found out that my dreams were abnormal. In creative writing class, we were prompted to write in our most memorable dream. Easily, I filled pages and pages of my sleep life. I wrote of how last night we'd been soaking our feet in the lake of a worn pier. My cuffed jeans skimmed the water, and we tried to stay so still that the minnows would nibble at our toes. And in the reflection of the water, I saw his face break out into a broad brace-faced grin. And as he loomed and tickled me. Even though I saw him coming, I couldn't help but curl and writhe in my fit of laughter, rolling into his lap and gripping onto him, ultimately thrashing us both into the water laughing. The dream ended when he kissed me on top of my forehead and temple and then patted his cheek twice with 2 fingers. It was our ritual. I reached up on the tips of my toes and I kissed him twice on the same cheek. A kiss for now and another when he needed it later. And I sat in class and I listened to everyone read aloud their dreams. One girl, blushing a bit, and read out, "I don't usually remember my dreams. I mean, like, if I do, it's just a fragment of something. Last night I dreamt that someone had broken in and I was trying to get my dad, and suddenly the burglar was like right behind me and I felt him there, you know? No matter how fast I'd run, he was just faster, and it was like my legs wouldn't work. I was so scared, and I woke up right before I could feel his hands around my neck. I couldn't get back to sleep. Nightmares suck." I dreamt that I'd been playing football with my team, you know? Everything was normal, except the mascot was a real tiger and he would jump up like Master Chief in Halo. Man, I wish that was real life. Tigers are cool, the boy exclaimed, miming throwing a football and smirking. A girl blushed and demurely tucked a stray hair behind her ear. I dreamt that the doctor came to take me away. 10, as in Dave and Tennant. I got to go into the tardies, and I got to see the pool. Yeah, I wish I'd have that one every night. Then it was my turn. I briefly explained that I generally dreamed every night, and I generally dreamed about the same thing. The same 2 people in the same place, and I remembered most of the details, except that their faces were shadowed. And I couldn't remember their names. It felt like a living memory. The TARDIS girl giggled. Maybe that's your soulmate. I've never had the same dream twice. That's weird. Football boy laughed. It must be nice to dream every night. That sounds nice, the girl with the nightmare said. She smiled at me. The class suggested to me all sorts of things. See a medium, look up dream meanings, post a classified ad to find my soulmate, and to keep a dream journal before the end bell broke us up. It left me a little befuddled and curious for the first time, as if those dreams held any significance. I'd wanted them to mean something. I'd want to not be alone. For all my life, I just felt an overwhelming urge to connect with people. Dreams are not enough to sustain a person, and I felt so tired. Mother was working overseas now, and while she supported me diligently to make sure that I had all I could ever want or need, the aloneness was a vacuum. The rational side of my being decided that I should talk to someone. That it wasn't normal for a girl almost at 18 to have no friends, an absent mother, a dead father, and a dream boyfriend. It couldn't be healthy. Sure, many other teens had it worse, and my mother wasn't abusive, and she also made sure that I felt provided for. We didn't have to worry about money, and I was spoiled enough so far as if I wanted something, I could just buy it. By the time that I was in high school, I had my own small library at home. Still, with no one to talk to, I started talking to my school counselor, Mr. Goldstein, as a last resort. He'd seen my type before. Kids that moved and had their roots pulled out so many times that it stunted their growth. He tried his best to be helpful. Whenever I felt morose, he'd listen. When I told him my troubles of being a girl super magnet for friendships, he'd suggested clubs, after-school activities, hobbies. And I really poured myself out to him. And it had been ages since I had someone really listen to me. My nannies were the last people that I'd been given such ties to, and all of them were just my memories. And I didn't dream of them anymore. Even though my tie was just a counselor and a student, it was something for me to hold on to in the waking world. And for a time, I felt better. Then, as everyone had, Mr. Goldstein left too. School told me that he had to take a leave of absence for personal reasons. And it happened from time to time. Adults have tons of obligations, and I was passed on to his replacement, Ms. Kwan. I liked her well enough, but I felt as though that she wasn't as invested. It felt like almost going to a doctor rather than opening up to a possible friend. Even with Mr. Goldstein gone, he gave me the push to ready myself for graduation and to apply for colleges. Mother decided to stay overseas and sell our home. She bought me a condo in the Northeast next to a large university that I was accepted into. Driven to succeed and provide, Mother gave me a generous stipend every month. Even though she couldn't be there with me physically, she made sure that I had the means to survive. As always. And once again, in a different part of the country and a new school, I set out to find a piece of normalcy. Still, I dreamed of my boy and his leg. His braces were gone now, and he was substantially taller than me. His shoulders were broad, and his chin and cheeks had started to sport thrashes of dark bristle. His lips still carried that flush fullness that he had as a boy, and I enjoyed kissing them all night. It wasn't my favorite hobby. It was a good thing that he wasn't real, or else I might have not taken my studies seriously. I decided on library sciences, but I had to make it through my first 2 years at university before I started in on my major. College felt more isolating than high school. New classes brought in new tides of new faces, and I had still not found the skill to make fast friends or slow friends. Let's be honest. I was in my junior year of college when I started feeling tired. It started with oversleeping and attributing it to wanting to spend more time in my nocturnal other world, but as sleeping into late morning ate into early afternoon, I started to worry. I was getting more hungry too, but even though I started eating more, I started to lose weight. My nightly walks started to get tiresome more quickly, and I found it hard to walk up the stairs as I was exhausted some nights. In my dreams, my boyfriend urged me to go see a doctor. He told me that I looked more pale than usual, and then my hands shook. My mother told me that a true summer vacation may be what I needed, and she encouraged me to take a trip, to fly out to more familiar grounds. I took his advice first and scheduled an appointment with my doctor. He poked and prodded me, checked my thyroid, and ran several tests of my blood work and heart. Besides having slightly below normal iron levels, he could find nothing wrong with me. He suggested that it may be stress-related and encouraged my mother's suggestion for a vacation. I found a short lease to a furnished house in the city where I was born, and I flew out there to have a new perspective over the summer. Even though I moved a half a dozen times or so since my father passed, it never got easier. Each move was draining, and at the end of the year I started feeling an arching anxiety when I had to fill up my boxes. I'd lived up by my college for 3 years now, and it was strangely sweet to be able to stay in one place. Despite being able to get used to the same walls and form a fond list for routes where I could walk, I didn't feel sad leaving my condo for the summer. In my hometown, I had found a favorite coffee spot next to the library, and I'd often spend a quiet chunk of my day stopping at each favorite place of my personal pilgrimage. Every day for the last month, I'd leave my house, walk the couple of miles to the library, pick out a new book to read, and then take breakfast, lunch, and liberal amounts of coffee at the cafe. I didn't recognize him, not even a twinge of familiarity as I eyed up an orange scone and an iced coffee. I'd grown so used to not being seen that I had stopped seeing people. So I took my copy of Jane Eyre and my breakfast, and I went outside and sat in the sun to let it warm my body and my soul. And that night in my sleeping world, I enjoyed my time with my boyfriend. His mother had made us cold turkey sandwiches and packed us a liter of cold Coke, and we munched on the offerings with our feet splashing in the cold lake water. He took a bite of his sandwich and looked over at me, slipping a dark curl between his fingers. "Are you real?" I could feel his eyes looking at me, touching at the sharp and soft features of my face. And I laughed, and we avoided this conversation. We just never had it. In all of the years that I visited him, I was happy to have a place where I was normal. I didn't want my afflictions to invade this part, this comfort. What kind of question is that? Of course I'm real. I think I'm more real here than when I wake up. And he blinked. In this world, I could both see and not see his face. It was like the experience of deja vu when I woke up. The memory of his face was somewhere, but when I recalled our dreams from the nose of his and his mother's face, they were just in shadow. "You wake up? Brianna, you dream all of this too?" And he became still, and I felt disoriented with the realization that I'd hoped for this. I'd hoped that I were special. I'd hoped that dreams could be real, and that connections made with people were not only through flesh and bone. Yeah, I go to sleep and I dream of you and your mom, and I wake up in my own bed. I remember most things, and pretty much I have the same dream with you. Here. My heart skittered like a rabbit that wanted to run. The textures of my dreams were almost a form of hyperrealism, and I could hear the trees and their leaves kissing the wind. The lake water smelled like wet moss and slit, and held my sandwich lamely. It was soggy. Am I crazy? We're dreaming? This isn't real. You're not real. I should probably start seeing someone. Obviously, you're some figment of my imagination that I drum up to fulfill some sort of loneliness that I felt. It can't be healthy. I look forward to these dreams. I look forward to seeing you and Mom again, to this damn cabin. Brianna, I think I even see you. I think I see you when I'm awake. He put his face in his hands and he shuddered. I put my hand on his back and I tried to calm him and silently wondered if he could feel my heart beating in my chest. I think those things too. I haven't seen you in the real world, at least I don't think. I don't remember what you look like. It's vague. And I frowned and I let my cool forehead rest on his bare shoulder. You think you saw me? Yeah, where I work. You come in and you order an orange scone and an iced coffee every day and read. It was your smile. And I froze and I stopped rubbing his back and we straightened and met each other's eyes. Brianna, what book were you reading? Jane Eyre. I just picked up a copy of Jane Eyre. And the next day I met Brant. He wasn't working. He'd called off and he was sitting at the table looking at the door nervously. I had my copy of Jane Eyre tucked under my arm and I nearly dropped it when I saw him. And that's when my life really started. Brant told me about his life and told me about mine. His mother had died when he was in middle school. It was a freak accident. They'd been up in the cabin in the UP and he and his dad were out fishing when it happened. His mother was eating breakfast by herself and choked and died. They found her on the floor in the middle of the afternoon. And it was far too late. For Brant, his childhood ended there. They buried his mom, sold the vacation home, and Brant kind of lost his father too. He was there, but he never really gotten over his wife's death. He'd taken up drinking and they were barely getting by. He started dreaming of his mom when he had a bad day. And then one day I showed up. He had a more normal life than I had lived. He had a good group of friends and hadn't even tried dating a girl in high school. Although he said these things never felt right. They didn't click as easily as we did. And for the longest time he thought that he was being unfair, comparing her to a dream, a ghost. But between going to college and working, he found himself in a better place to be single. And that's how things began. And listener, it was beautiful. I started feeling better. And before bed, each night we'd chat over webcam and we'd share our days. And at night, we'd still share our dreams, except now the settings would change from time to time. Brant sometimes appeared in my childhood home or at a beloved travel destination that I visited in my youth. And while we were still long distance, we spent hours together. I finished up and I got my degree and moved back to my hometown. We bought a little condo and I helped out his dad. got into some programs to try and settle his demons. We felt so lucky. And I felt so normal. He proposed and we started talking about having a family together. I bought a couple of onesies, one for a girl and one for a boy, and I'd laid them side by side, imagining the little body that could fill it. But then he got sick. It started with him being tired all the time. He started losing weight, his hands started shaking, and he got so weak. Just like what happened to me. The doctors tried to find out what was wrong with him. All the tests they performed came back normal. He was normal, but he was wasting away. His body started shutting down and he was put into hospice care. My care. He was no longer in my dreams. But I had this man, his body, this shell, and I could hold on to its hand. I'd never felt so alone. They say it's better to have loved and lost than to never have loved at all. And without him, I live a half-life. I know what it meant to be happy, and I know that without him, that happiness will be lost. Doctors could not help him. Medicine, it did nothing. And love only gave way to comfort. So I resorted to the last thing that I could think of. I hired a medium. Did you know that you can find them in the Yellow Pages? She came to our condo in a beat-up old gremlin. She had no bag, no talismans, no show. Madame Celeste was a fair woman, with skin that looked like she was in her 20s and hair that was aging in her 50s. She'd seen sun, and freckles had dotted her nose where her brown-rimmed glasses rested. She fit the flair of a medium with a sort of boho chic style. And I thoroughly believed that I would have been better burning my money rather than calling her. "Can I see the man?" She stood in our hallway. At least she was direct. I nodded and I led her into her bedroom where he was set up. She pulled the chair to the bed and touched the hair around him. She touched his face lightly, laid her hand slightly above his chest, and then just settled with holding his hand, closing her eyes, and she frowned. "He's still there. Vaguely. He is almost gone." "Gone? Is he dying?" I blinked rapidly. I didn't need a medium to tell me that Brant was fading. He was nearly a skeleton with skin. The physical evidence made that apparent. "Dying? Yes. If he leaves, he will die. His essence, his spirit, and his soul, what have you, it is almost gone. He's nearly empty. So empty, this one." She looked perplexed. "What does that mean? He's empty? His soul is missing?" I didn't have words. This was insane. This woman was insane. "There are multiple kinds of death. Naturally, our bodies house our spirits until it breaks down. Like any body, time takes its toll. Then the spirit moves on, as is the natural order of things. But the body needs a soul, just like the soul needs a body. This body's soul is very damaged. Just scraps of it left. I don't know what's causing it, but he could repair it if no damage is done. You can have hope." She looked at me, looking through me. "Can I have your hand?" And I nodded and I gave the woman my hand. Hers were cool and smooth and mine were sweaty and shaky. She took a moment and closed her eyes, a line forming between her brows. Her eyes snapped open and she dropped her hand. "Leave here. Leave here now if you love him. Call your mother. She has what you must know. I must go." And she stood up and shook herself, casting a bewildered look between Brant and me. And I blinked, confused and afraid. "What does that mean? Leave? Why? Why do I have to go? Why should I call my mother?" And she swallowed. "She knows things that you have not seen, have not accepted. It is not my place to tell you, but she knows why. She knows everything. All this time. She knows what went wrong. Goodbye, Miss Brianna." And she left. I tried to go after her, but she ignored me mutely, got in her beat-up car, and with a sputter, drove off. I tried to call her, I tried to find her business, but she would not give me anything else. So I called my mother. She sent me letters from time to time, emails, to make sure that I was all right, to check in on Brant. We weren't close. We'd never been close. She always had her work and overseas. She found a life that she couldn't have in this country. And I'd forgiven her a long time ago. And the phone rang, and within a few seconds she picked up.
Brianna, are you all right? Why are you calling? It's late.
Ah, yes. The time difference. I forgot. The sudden phone call mixed with abruptness of the call must have startled her. I told her what happened that day, and awkwardly I felt so foolish. I never told her about my day or my life or the petty things that bothered me. She was always too busy, her time too valuable for me to waste on my little problems. She remained silent as I finished and sucked in a breath.
Brianna, dear, I am sorry. I am so sorry.
She started crying. I never heard my mother cry.
Your father and I were so in love, and we desperately wanted children. We tried for years. We tried IVF, we tried fertility treatments. There was something wrong with me. I couldn't have children, sweetheart. I desperately wanted to be your mother. I wanted to have my own child. I wanted to have a child that was a product of our love, and I was so selfish and stupid.
She shuddered as she cried and talked.
I prayed every night for a miracle. And one night, I had a dream at a crossroad. It was just me and a well-dressed man. He told me that he heard of my difficulty and that he wanted to help. That I could help him too, and that there would be no price that I would have to pay. I agreed, Brianna. So nice and comforting. It was such a nice dream to be freely given the life that I was so desperately wanting. So I accepted. And then you were born. My miracle baby. You were perfect. With a crown of dark curls, and you couldn't stop smiling. Your father was even more enamored with you than I was, and begged me to stay home to raise you. And so he stayed home and took care of you, and for your every need and your want. We were so happy. Do you remember?
And I nodded, holding back tears. My father was my whole world back then. He tried so hard to be a good father. Yes, Mother.
Then he got sick. At first, he was just tired, and then he started to lose weight. His hands started to shake, and he got so weak. And one day, he just collapsed, and then couldn't get out of bed. The doctors couldn't figure out what happened. They couldn't figure out why he was so sick. His blood tests, his MRI, everything was normal.
My heart stopped. I never heard this before. Why hadn't I thought to ask?
And when he passed, I was heartbroken and terrified that you might get sick too. That it was some fungus or amoeba or a genetic disease that hadn't been found yet. But you were the perfect spirit of health. I didn't take his death well, and I threw myself into work instead of being there for you. With you. I hired nannies to raise you in my stead, and for a while I was getting better. I was healing. I was going to cut back my hours when your first nanny got sick. I noticed her hand shaking, and she had been so tired lately. I was shocked and terrified, so I gave her some money to take some time off and moved us across country for a job.
I couldn't breathe. This couldn't be right. How did I not notice?
Then the next nanny fell ill. And did the same thing again and again, and I gave them money and moved until your last nanny. Maddie's little girl got sick. She died, Brianna. Just like your father, and I didn't want to see. And you went to school, and everything was normal for a few years. You got depressed, and you started seeing your school counselor, and I thought that you were finally getting past our line of bad luck. Then I got a letter in the mail from your school, letting us know that Mr. Goldstein was taking a leave of absence for personal reasons. Again, I didn't think anything of it, and then the next letter came telling me that he had passed. And after that, I looked up your old nannies. Every last one had passed. Every person that you had touched, really touched in your life, had died. And I finally remembered that dream at the crossroads. The dream with the demon. I didn't have to pay the price, but there was a price. He visited me once more. The suit disheveled, the dream a nightmare. He smirked at me, leered at me, and asked me how my darling baby girl was doing. He thanked me for bringing one of his creatures into the world. A creature that wasn't fully whole, a creature that wasn't fully human. He told me that the price of your survival depended on you. Taking it away from others. People are wary of you, Rana. Because you are a predator. They know that you are dangerous. So they have walls up. If people let you in even a little, you just siphon off whatever makes them. Whatever makes them them until they wither away to husks. Your father had nannies. Your fiancé, those poor people, let you into their lives and you've used them up. I live in another country, so I don't have to be around you. My letters come from a fake address. You have been my demon. My curse. My albatross to bear. I am so sorry that I brought you into this world. Please don't call me again.
She hung up. I stared at the phone, and as my mind caught up, I added her perspective to my limited one. This entire time, I choose to view my story as the underdog, the weak protagonist struggling against misfortune. I had not considered that I had control over my tale, that this entire time I had power. I am a monster. Setting the phone down, I stripped off my clothes and I showered. And I let myself mourn. I let it all out and I prepared. Hair still dripping, I packed my laptop and some clothes, made arrangements for Brant, and I flew several states away to try and sever the distance between us. The distance wasn't the issue. It was my hunger and my connection with him. And that night, last night, I dreamed and found my answer. Many answers, all from a man in a pinstripe suit. I'm so happy that I packed my laptop. I'm quite pleased that this hotel has free Wi-Fi. I've discovered that my dreams do touch people. I'm not oil and water or a repellent force. Instead, I knock people down like dominoes, one after the other after the other. I am the architect. I can save Brant. I just needed you. Words are a clever invention, really. They're a voice in your head, a waking dream almost. My voice is inside your head. My story tucked between your eyes. I am inside you now. And as we get older, we think that getting tired is the normal course of aging. We all take on too much sometimes. And being tired may be a sign to take a vacation. And when you get tired, I highly recommend that you take that vacation. Enjoy the peace of those memories. You won't have much time. I will not save you. I need it. I need so many things, listener. And most of all, I need Brant. And you're just a faceless being on the other side of the screen.